Okay, so this is part 2 of the first module that we are looking at, ways of thinking. In the previous section, we explored what exactly is critical thinking. So we looked at this idea of asking why, of exploring different meanings behind things and really getting to the crux of the meaning. So in order to do that, there are techniques that we can use. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is exploring text or whatever kind of message by looking at context, audience, and purpose. So that is basically how we sort of figure out what exactly is it that I am looking at. We can read an article or an essay or a story or watch a movie, and we can passively enjoy it. But to take a sort of bit of a step back and think about what specifically is it that I am looking at, right? That will sort of help us to understand why we are reacting the way that we are reacting and why the message was created in the first place. So it's basically asking, how do I know what this thing really means? So we look at the audience, the context, and the purpose. So context, first off, context is basically, what is the big picture here? So what? Why should I care? Right. And so we look at things like, who is it that is saying this message? And what exactly is it that that person is trying to gain? Right. There's always some kind of reasoning behind an author or a speaker or, why is it that this person is saying this thing? And also we need to look at what is happening in the history of this message. So that could be in terms of, large ideas like political, social, economic contexts. It also could just be a matter of sort of, what was said before, right? Where is this said in this moment of, the conversation or the essay? And then finally, sort of where was this message delivered, right? Is this a comment in passing, or is this a large speech in front of a huge audience? Is this a formal piece of writing in an academic journal, or is this a bit of a, fun, casual fluff piece, right? What is it? And so this is where we get that idea of taking something out of context. If you have this sort of tiny little soundbite, but you remove all of this important sort of background information, you can really twist a sentence to mean multiple things. So if we take this picture as an example of this, first glance, you might look at this and think, oh my God, this baby is about to be eaten by a crocodile. That is terrifying at first glance. Then we sort of take a moment to realize, okay, this isn't a live crocodile, this is a statue. So that changes the meaning completely. The context of this being a stationary object as opposed to a man-eating beast immediately changes the context. So now we're looking at it like, haha, that's kind of funny. Somebody stuck their baby in the mouth of this crocodile. That's, what a silly picture, right? So then there's that context. But then if we understand even more about this image, this is actually a picture of Bindi Irwin's daughter. Now, for those of you who don't know, Bindi Irwin is the daughter of Steve Irwin, who was the crocodile hunter. He tragically was killed in an accident quite a number of years ago. His daughter has now grown up, she has married, and she now has an 8-month-old daughter of her own. So within the context of that, we now see this picture as actually something that is quite sweet and significant in the context of who this person is and her family history. So we can see how context really does matter when sort of evaluating what a message or a text or an image or whatever it is, what that really means. If we move on to audience, who is the speaker or the writer speaking to? right? Who is the intended audience? Now, this really matters because the message is going to change depending on who is the intended person receiving it, right? The level of education of the person, the age of the intended audience, the culture of the intended audience, whether or not you are speaking to an audience who, you know, completely is on board and is as passionate about this thing as you are, or whether you are sort of, you know, maybe speaking to a group of people who have differing opinions, right? All of that is going to inform the way that you present the message. For a really cool example of this kind of idea at work, I've linked a video of explaining the theory of music to 5 different types of audiences, from a 5-year-old child all the way up to sort of an expert musician. So if you want to have a look at how the message changes depending on the audience, I really encourage you to have a look at that video. It's pretty cool. There's a whole series of them. So audience matters. And then the final one, purpose, right? There are 3 main reasons why there is communication. We either communicate in order to teach, to persuade, or to entertain. So if we have a look at this example here, right, this is just, you know, kind of a goofy needlepoint. If this is intended to teach somebody, right, then the message that we can get here is that this was created by some sort of sharp item that is continually moving through this background, right? That is what we can learn from this. If we are looking at this as a message to persuade, right, maybe this creator is persuading us to, you know, not necessarily cross this person because perhaps they are a little dangerous. And then finally, if this is just to entertain, it's a goofy joke that is sort of heightened by this sort of medium that is typically reserved for, you know, flowers and Bible quotes and granny things, and instead is sort of flipped on its head and is, you know, it's got a skull in there and it's got sort of a rougher message. So that's part of the humor that entertains us. So, you know, we can interpret this different ways depending on what we think the purpose of the message is. So those are the things that we initially want to look at when we are applying critical thinking and determining, why did somebody create this and why do I feel the way that I feel? So as a final bit of a thought, you know, demonstration in this video, I want to play a little clip from, you probably immediately recognize what this is. This is the infamous "I Have a Dream" speech from Martin Luther King.
Poverty. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
So this is a significant piece of rhetoric in our North American history, right? Everybody kind of has some sort of familiarity with Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech. And so, we'll get into rhetoric later on because this is rhetorically a very successful speech. But now understanding these concepts of context and audience and purpose, it might help us to see again why this became such a significant moment in our history. So the context of it is that this was after a massive march onto the Washington Monument, now not the Capitol building, that's something entirely different, but onto the monument, right? The Great Mall where the Abraham Lincoln statue is, right? So this huge march for racial inequality because minorities, visible minorities, particularly African Americans, were not receiving equal pay, were not receiving equal rights in terms of job security or health benefits or things like that, right? There was still a lot of disparity in the human rights. So this huge march happened. Now, when we think about audience and the camera panned back, we can see that not only is he, did he end up sort of speaking to generations, because we still use this as an example, that was kind of, unintended, but his audience here is hundreds of thousands of people. Right? And that is quite significant. And then again, the purpose, right? Now this is where we get to sort of think about things a little bit, like what is the purpose of this? This is a rally, right? So he is giving this message of equality and, truth and justice for all, but also this kind of like peaceful, but call to action, right? And so, this is a very, very significant moment in the civil rights movement. And we can see through this video and thinking about context and audience and purpose, it gives even more understanding to what we kind of understand a little bit about that this speech existed, and it had that neat "I have a dream" sort of repetition in it. Now, hopefully, with thinking about context, audience, and purpose, we have a bit more of an understanding. So there's a bit of an activity for you I'd like you to have a look at. And as always, if you have any questions or want to chat about this more, please reach out by email or come see me during my office hour. Thanks very much.